Thomas and Friends, The Adventures of Thomas. 8 fantastic stories about Thomas and his friends. First story. Thomas, Bertie, and the Bumpy Line. Every afternoon, Thomas the tank engine puffs along his branch line with Annie and Carabel. First, they pass the water mill. Next, they come to a big farm. Then, they can see a bridge with a village nestled either side of it. This is a special place. Whenever children hear Thomas coming along, they stand on the bridge waving until he's out of sight. One day, Thomas is running late. He'd stopped at the signal before the bridge to talk to some new children. Percy was waiting too. "Hurry up, Thomas," called Percy when the signal dropped. "If you're late, the Fat Controller may get a new engine to replace you." "He would never do that," thought Thomas. He was worried. Next day, Thomas hurried along the line. Just ahead was the goods yard. There, on the platform, was an inspector waving a red flag. Next, Thomas saw some children. They were waving too. "Something must be wrong," thought Thomas. "This station is for goods, not passengers." "Help, Thomas, help! We are glad to see you," called the children. "Please, will you take us home?" The station master explained to Thomas's driver that the school bus had broken down and that all the parents would be worried if the children were late. Thomas waited as the children walked down from the bridge. Then he took them to the next station, where Bertie was waiting to take them home. When Thomas finished his journey, he was very late. He was worried that the Fat Controller might be cross with him. "I warned Thomas," puffed Percy to James. "He's been late one time too many." "He'll be in trouble now." But next morning, the Fat Controller was nowhere to be seen. "Thank goodness," sighed Thomas. Thomas knows every part of his branch line, but just ahead was a stretch where the hot sun had bent the rails on the track. "Careful, Thomas," called his driver, but it was too late. "That's done it," said his driver. "We shan't get any further today. But what about my passengers?" "Don't you worry. They'll be looked after," replied his driver. While workmen repaired the line, Thomas had to shunt trucks in the yard. Bertie came to see him. "I understand you need my help again." "Yes, Bertie," replied Thomas sadly. "I can't run without my rails." Bertie set off to collect Thomas's passengers. "Hello, Bertie," they said. "We are glad you are here." Bertie drove along the road that runs by the railway. He stopped at each station along the line. Sometimes he stopped between stations to let people off closer to their homes. Thomas felt miserable. "I've lost my passengers. They'll like Bertie better than me." The Fat Controller arrived. "The branch line is repaired. I'm going to change the timetable so that you and Bertie can work together." When Thomas reached the station, There were all his passengers. Bertie's a good boss, but we missed our train rides with you, they said. Later, Thomas spoke to Bertie. Thank you for looking after my passengers. That's all right, Thomas. I like to make new friends, but I'm glad to share them with you. Bertie, said Thomas, you're a very good friend indeed. Trust Thomas. Thomas the Tank Engine was feeling bright and cheerful. It was a splendid day. Good morning. He whistles to some cars, but the cars didn't reply. Never mind, said Thomas. They're busy with their breakfast. Next he saw Bertie. Hello, Bertie. Care for a race today? But all Bertie could say was, Ouch! That's another hole in the road. I'm sorry, Bertie, smiled Thomas. Thomas was still in good spirits when Bertie arrived at the next station. Bad luck, Bertie, said Thomas. Now, if you were a steam engine, you would run on a pair of reliable rails. Replied Bertie. The railway was supposed to deliver tar to mend the road 2 weeks ago. You can't trust a thing that runs on rails. I run on rails. You can trust me, Bertie. I'll see if I can find out what's happened. Thomas left Bertie and made his way along the branch line towards the big station by the sea. James was snorting about in the yard. It's too bad. Percy goes to work at the harbour, and I do his job here, there, and everywhere. Take that. Ooh, groaned the trucks. Just you wait. We'll show you. Gordon laughed. I'll tell you what, James. If you pretended to be ill everywhere, you couldn't shunt trucks here, or go to the quarry there, could you? What a good idea, agreed James. Look, here comes Thomas. I'll start pretending now. Thomas was sorry to see the engines looking miserable. Cheer up. It's a beautiful day. Yes, grumbled Gordon, but not for James. What's the matter? He's sick, replied Gordon. Yes, I am, stuttered James. I don't feel well at all. Don't worry, said Thomas kindly. I'll help out if you're ill. Gordon and James sniggered quietly to each other. Some of James's trucks were coupled behind Thomas, and he steamed away to the quarry. The trucks were still cross. We couldn't pay James back for bumping us, so we'll play tricks on Thomas instead. One engine is as good as another. But Thomas didn't hear them. He collected all the stone from the quarry, then set off back to the junction. Danger lay ahead. Now for our plan, giggled the trucks. Go faster, go faster. Slow down, called Thomas's driver and applied the brakes. Poor Thomas stood dazed and surprised in a muddy pond as a toad eyed him suspiciously. Boss my buffers, muttered Thomas. The day started so well too. Doug pulled away the trucks, and Edward helped Thomas back to the junction. Suddenly, Thomas remembered the missing tar. He told Edward all about it. That's strange, said Edward. A truck full of tar's been left at my station. That must be it. Driver will make sure it gets to Bertie now. Later, James spoke to Thomas. "I'm sorry about your accident," he muttered, "and so's Gordon. We didn't mean to get you into trouble." "No, indeed," spluttered Gordon. "A mere misunderstanding, Thomas. All's well that ends well." Just then Bertie arrived. He looked much more cheerful. "My road's being mended now." "Oh, I am glad," replied Thomas. "Thanks for all you did. Now I know I can trust an engine, especially if his name is Thomas." Gordon and James puffed silently away to the shed. But Thomas still had company. "Well, well," he sighed, "what a day for surprises." The Toad, who was looking forward to a ride home, noisily agreed. "Diesel does it again." Duck and Percy enjoy the work at the harbour, pulling and pushing trucks full of cargo to and from the quay. But one morning the engines were exhausted. The harbour was busier than ever. The Fat Controller promised that another engine would be found to help them. "It's about time," said Percy. "I ache so much I can hardly get my wheels to move," agreed Duck. They waited for the engine to arrive. It came as a shock when he did. "Good morning," squirmed Diesel in his oily voice. The two engines had not worked with Diesel for a long time. "What are you doing here?" gasped Duck. "Your worthy fat, Sir Topham had sent me. I hope you are pleased to see me. I am to shunt some dreadfully tiresome trucks." "Shunt where?" Percy said suspiciously. "Where? Why, from here to there," purred Diesel. "And then again from there to here. Easy, isn't it?" With that, Diesel, as if to make himself clear, bumped some trucks hard. "Oh!" screamed the trucks. "Grrr!" growled Diesel. Percy and Duck were horrified. They did not trust Diesel at all. They refused to work and would not leave their shed. The Fat Controller was enjoying his tea and ice bun when the telephone rang. "So there's trouble in the yard. I'll be there right away." Diesel was working loudly and alone. Cargo lay on the quay. Ships and passengers were delayed. Everyone was complaining about the Fat Controller's railway. Percy and Duck were sulking in their shed. "What's all this?" demanded the Fat Controller. We're on strike, sir," said Percy. "Yes," added Duck. "Beg pardon, sir, but we won't work with Diesel, sir." Then, in a quiet, hurt voice, he added, "You said you sent him packing, sir. I have to give Diesel a second chance. I am trying to help you by bringing Diesel here. Now you must help me. He was the only engine available." Percy and Duck went sadly back to work. Next morning things were no better. Diesel's driver had not put his brakes on properly, and Diesel started to move. He went bump straight into Percy. "Oh!" Percy had an awful fright. "Wake up there, Percy," scowled Diesel. "You have work to do." He didn't say he was sorry to Percy. Later, Diesel bumped the truck so hard that the loads went everywhere. "Oh, the Fat Controller say," gasped Percy. "You won't like it," said Duck. "So who's going to tell him, I wonder?" said Diesel. "Two little goody-goody telltales like you, I suppose." Percy and Duck did not want to be telltales, so they said nothing. Diesel, thinking he could get away with his bad behavior, was ruder than ever. Next day, he was shunting trucks full of china clay. He banged the trucks hard into the buffers, but the buffers weren't secure. The silly trucks were sunk. Soon, the Fat Controller heard the news. The trucks were hoisted safely from the sea, but the clay was lost. The Fat Controller spoke severely to Diesel. "Things worked much better here before you arrived. I shall not be inviting you back. Now, Duck and Percy, I hope you won't mind having to handle the work by yourselves again." "Oh, no, sir. Yes, please, sir," replied the engines. Whistling cheerfully, they puffed back to work, while Diesel sulked slowly away. Thomas, Percy, and the post train. At night, when the other engines are tucked away in their sheds, you can still hear the faraway call of an engine's whistle and the clickety-clack of train wheels turning. This is the sound of the post train. One train is pulled by Thomas and the other by Percy, as the loads are too heavy for one engine to do the work alone. The post is loaded into trucks at both the harbours, and the engines pull their trains through the silent stations, delivering their precious loads. On a clear night, a big shiny moon brightens their journey, but often Thomas and Percy can't even see the stars. But whatever the weather, lamps along the track always light their way. One night, Percy was waiting at the junction. The main line train was late. At last, Henry arrived. "Sorry," he puffed. "The mailboat from the mainland was delayed." "Come on, Percy," said his driver. "Let's make up for lost time." Percy puffed along as quickly as he could, but the sun was already rising as he finished his work. "Never mind," thought Percy. "It's nice to be up and about when it's the start of a new day and there's no one else around." Percy was not alone for long. "Bother!" said Percy. "It's that dizzy thing Harold." "Good morning," whirred Harold. "I always said railways were out of date, but you're so slow with the post, you should give everyone their stamps back, post haste." Percy was too tired to explain. "Bird brain," he muttered. "Good morning, Percy," called Duck. "You're up early." "No, you're wrong," sighed Percy. "I'm back tired and late. Ugh." He rolled into the shed and fell asleep almost before his buffers touched the bar. His driver decided to set off early that evening. Thomas was waiting at the station. "Thank goodness I've a chance to speak to you. Driver says that the person in charge of the post has complained to the Fat Controller about the delay last night." "But that wasn't my fault," replied Percy. "I know," said Thomas, "and so does the Fat Controller. But this post person wouldn't listen. Tonight we'll just have to be quicker than ever before." The engines were just leaving the station when they heard a familiar buzzing. I say, you two, there's news flying about. Where? puffed Percy. All over the place. They're going to scrap the post train and use me instead. Wings work wonders, you know, always. Rubbish, huffed Thomas. That night, everything ran like clockwork. Thomas and Percy steamed through the stations, making good time everywhere they went. At a station, Thomas noticed a man looking cold and worried. He had missed his train home. "We can give you a ride," said Thomas's driver, "but it'll be rather uncomfortable." "Thank you," said the man. "Anything's better than sitting here." The next afternoon, Percy passed the airfield and saw Harold. "Hello, lazy wings. Are you too tired to fly today?" "The wind's too strong. I've been grounded," grumbled Harold. "You need rails," laughed Percy. "They work wonders, you know, always." That night, the Fat Controller showed the two engines a letter. It was from the man who had missed his train. "He thinks you're both splendid," said the Fat Controller, "and everyone says that the post train is the pride of the line." The end.